No? Yes. I keep feeling like every person that speaks, I can listen to them for the whole day, and then they run out of time and we've got to move on. That was phenomenal. Thank you for the incredible work you guys do in helping us understand this generation and the transition of generations. It is truly significant. So I'll just tell all of you guys to buy his book. Because we definitely want more, and I think this information is incredible in helping frame the problem we're solving. But I'm here to actually frame out the conversation now and transition us into a time of group discussion. And can I ask you just to put that on there? When we started working on this, I gave my team a great headache. I said I wanted a physical cube when we have the meeting. And Marley loved me for it. She thought it was a great idea. And then she hoped I would forget about it. And then she arrived here a couple of weeks ago and she was like, do you still want that? She didn't say anything. I brought it up and she was like, Michelle, I told you that he was not going to forget about it. So I didn't forget about it. And Marley, thank you. Thank you for this. This is amazing. And I'll tell you guys why it's amazing in a minute. Because here's the thing, is if I can find my place on my own cube here. This is what I'm looking for. There we go. Okay, we're having a conversation. We're saying not on our watch. The statistics we're hearing, the urgency Bonnie's putting on the table, the incredible wisdom that Colin shared. Colin, what you guys have done through Converge and the World Evangelical Alliance, we are grateful to be able to partner with you guys and journey along with that. But we're saying not on our watch, right? This is a statement of intent. We've defined the problem we're trying to solve. Here's the problem we're trying to solve, right? We're trying to say, how do we turn around the trajectory of Christianity in the next generation? If you guys can bring on the Menti, that'll be great. So how do we turn around the trajectory of Christianity in the next generation? This is a difficult thing to do. If somebody's able to figure this out, if it was easy, it would have been done. This is hard. But we're in this space now where we're saying, listen, this hard thing, we want to do this hard thing. And for the next couple of days, we believe that this room is smarter than any one individual. The reason why we don't have long 30-minute, 1 hour, 3 hour sessions is not because the people in this room can't speak for 3 hours. Somebody asked me yesterday, where's the green room? I said, this is the green room, okay? Because everybody in here is here to speak, is here to contribute, is here to have the meeting, because we believe that the answer lies not in one person, however incredible they might be, but the answer lies in us collectively bringing our wisdom to the table. So we say we're going to answer this together, and in answering this together, we've got to define some parameters, and that's where the cube comes in. The cube is an effort to define the parameters within which we're going to pass through the valley of complexity on the way to clarity. And my hope is that come Friday, after the discussions we're going to have today, the discussions we're going to have tomorrow, on Friday we're going to start giving feedback. And what I'm trusting God for is that as we come together on Friday, we'll start coming up with clear strategies, with clear relationships, with clear next steps, with clarity on what to do next. We'll get to the hilltop of clarity by Friday, but right now we're heading into the confusion of figuring this out. We've got to answer some hard questions. We've got to wrestle with some things, but we need a context within which to wrestle together. And Mark has actually introduced the first part of the context from which we're going to approach this problem, and that's these 4 questions that every generation has to answer. Those questions he mentioned, questions of identity, questions of belonging, questions of value, and questions of epistemology, right? Who am I? Who am I going to live my life with? What matters? What's important in this life? And what is true? These 4 questions define every generation. Our answers to these questions is defining a generation. And right now, the way this generation is answering this question is causing them to walk away from the faith and the church. And this is one of the lenses we've got to put up, and we've got to say, how are we suggesting answers to these questions versus how are these questions being answered by a generation growing up right now? And that's one perspective that we're going to use as we look at this problem, is we're going to look at the 4 questions that define a generation. But we're not going to stop there, because the conversation is more complex than that. So keep this in mind for a second and just go on a journey with me, because the next layer of complexity we're going to dig into this afternoon, and it's this layer of complexity. We live in a society that is made up of different constructs. There's different parts of society. You might have heard of the 7 mountains or the 8 spheres of society, right? There's these different constructs, and let me advance the slide, that way you can see them up there. But these different constructs, there's the construct in society of spirituality, right? It's the construct of the church. A lot of you, how many of you in the room are pastors or leaders within the context of a church? Let me just see some hands. Okay, so we've got some people that find their primary role within spirituality. I believe this is a key construct within the church. The second key construct is the one of mentality, right? So what you'll notice if you're familiar with the mountains, or you're familiar with the spheres of society, is you'll notice that we've simplified them some, right? We've summarized them into 4 groups rather than 7 or 8, because you can only get so many things on one cube, right, Marley? It's hard work. So mentality is the stuff that makes up the way people think, right? It's the stuff that makes up people's worldview. It's the stuff that makes up, it's your schooling, it's education, it's the things that create the way in which you view the world. That's the next construct. The next thing that makes a society is its productivity. It's business, it's government, it's the way people work. It's a construct of society. And the last one is lifestyle, it's healthcare, it's family. If we don't have healthy families, we'll never change a generation. But what you'll see if you look at this side of the cube is you'll notice that we're not trying to reform the church, we're trying to bring the kingdom of God to planet Earth. Part of it is reforming the church, but that's only part of it. Is we've got to activate the 99% of people that are not in vocational ministry if we're going to finish the Great Commission. There's only 1% that's in vocational ministry. 99% of the Church of Jesus Christ, 99% of the body of Christ is not receiving a salary from doing Christian work. Except for Dallas, it's a little different in Dallas, but the rest of the world. We've got to use everybody. We've got to activate everybody. That's why a large percentage of this room is in business. About a third of you are in one form or another of business. Why? Because if we're going to change the world, we're going to need business to help change the world. We've got to change the way we do business if we're going to change the way we do this. And therefore, we've got to look at all 4 constructs of society in this conversation. The third thing we've got to understand, if we're going to change this, if we're going to answer this, is we've got to understand that there's 10 regions of the world, and these 10 regions have similarity. I love what Mark said, that this generation has more in common with one another globally than what they do with people of other generations. But the reality is still that this generation is still in different contexts around the world, and different cultures have different strengths and different weaknesses. I was looking at the statistics Mark was sharing, and I was seeing the strength in Africa, and I was going, praise God, Africa's in the room. The USA needs to learn from Africa, right? Where's Steve with his prayer? God, forgive us for thinking that the West has all the answers because they have the shiniest programs. It would appear that the next generation is proclaiming to us, is showing us that there are some things in hardship that we need to learn from the rest. I'm working on my fantasy Christian Olympics team. Okay, so currently I've got in the prayer competition, I've got the Korean church. Okay, I've got them penciled in there. In the dancing component, I've got the Brazilian church in there, and I'm building it out. I'm thinking that the Latin American church is definitely going to win the worship competition in the Christian Olympics, and so forth and so on, right? But there's different strengths in different parts, and we've got to learn from one another, but we've got to find answers that works in the 10 regions of the world, and hence the cube. is we are going to explore the problem of turning the trajectory. Oh, there's that word again. Is there any language in which that word is easy? Turning the trajectory of Christianity in the next generation, but we're going to look at that problem from the 4 questions the generation is asking, the constructs of society, and the 10 regions of the world, and where these things interact with one another, I believe we're going to find the wisdom and the simplicity and the answers we are looking for. And that's the next couple of days together. We're going to take this complex issue and we're going to trust God that we'll find the intersections and the answers by looking at it in a holistic way. So first up, we're going to start the conversation, and I was supposed to advance this. We're going to start the conversation now with regards to these 4 questions that Mark put on the table, right? With regards to identity, belonging, values, and epistemology. And I want to invite you to quickly go back to the Menti app if you're able. So if you go to the commissioned app and you click on interactive and you click on participate, it'll take you straight here. Alternatively, take a picture of the QR code and it should get you there. Or just go to your web browser, menti.com. If you haven't managed to get on the Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi's name is Next Move and the password is Global22 with a capital G. Okay, so if you make your way there, if you manage to connect on here, I quickly want to ask you guys a couple of questions and we're going to think together. And part of what I'm doing here is this is me creating a safe space for all the introverts in the room, right? So I'm giving you an opportunity to think about the 4 questions that every generation is asking, the 4 things that define a generation. I'm giving you an opportunity to think about it for a minute and then we're going to go into it. So here's my question as you think about it. How hard did you or do you find defining these 4 things? And what I want you to do is I simply want you to move those sliders around and define them. Just say, how hard do you find these ones? Which ones are harder? Which ones are easier for you to do? If you think through these 4 questions, are you struggling more with identity, with belonging, with values, and epistemology? Now, maybe we're all in a place where we'll say we're all leaders here. It's a 10 out of 10 for each of us. But then tell me how it was in your journey growing up, in your generation, in your journey, which were harder, which were easier as you were figuring out what it was, who it was that you were going to be, who you belonged with, and what you deemed important and valuable in life. And let's see where that kind of goes. It would appear that belonging is less hard than finding the truth. It would appear that for this generation, at least for this room, we're saying that finding the truth is harder. Identity is neck and neck with it now, and it would appear that it's not moving too much around as we're getting, but value seems to be harder than truth. Okay, so it's shifting. Values and truth are harder. The other 2 are easier, with values being the hardest thing for this group to define. Now I'm going to ask you the same question, but now I don't want you to think of your journey. It switched again? Oh. Sorry. I apologize. So the slider says 1 is impossible, 1 is hard, and 10 is easy. So we found identity, we find belonging the hardest, right? Is that true? Is that how you answered? Belonging's the hardest. Identity was, no, yes. Belonging's the hardest. Identity is second hardest. We found truth to be third hardest, and we found values to be the easiest. So it's easiest to know what's valuable, what matters, what's right and wrong. Hardest to know, this goes this way now. Hardest to know where we belong, who we fit in with. That was your journey. Now I want you to channel your best Gen Zer, okay? The emerging generation. What do you think is hard for them as they are emerging. So the emerging generation, how do you think they would be answering this question? So the generation that's coming up, what are your thoughts on this one? Is this one swapped around?
Switched.
Okay, so it's switched around. I'm just keeping it interesting, okay? We're just keeping the mentee interesting, okay? So this time it's switched. No problem with the switching. Next generation is no problem. So do you see how it's the other way around now? So if you want to say it's harder, you score it higher. If it's easier, you score it lower. This one is the way both were supposed to be. So I apologize. I did set this up myself, so I am guilty here. Okay, so it would appear that we're saying that this emerging generation is finding truth the hardest. Is that true? Is that what we think? They're finding truth the hardest? Truth is the hardest thing to define in this generation. I'm looking for all the Gen Zers and they're giving me very good yeses. Truth is the hardest thing to define in this generation. I hope that this has given you a little bit of a mental break to think, because now you're going to speak. And for the next 12 minutes, I want you to turn to your table and I'm not going to give you a question. I'm simply going to let you loose on the problem. Does that make sense? So there's no question here. I don't want you to answer a particular question. I want you to think about the problem. As the next generation is answering these 4 questions, and as we answered them in another way, what should we do? What do we do with this information? How do we solve our problem of turning the trajectory of Christianity in the next generation? By considering the 4 things that define this generation